Okay, I am so pumped for this one because today we're taking some truly fascinating research and turning it into a concrete, actionable blueprint for revolutionizing your workplace culture. We're going to dive deep into the dark, destructive side of toxic management, but we're not staying there. We're going to contrast it with this incredibly bright, empowering framework called servant leadership. I mean, we've all seen good teams go completely bad, right? Well, today we're looking at the hard data to understand exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how we fix it.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with the toxic leadership trap and the poison of favoritism. Then, we'll shift gears into emotional intelligence, the servant leadership model, how to stay objective, and finally, we'll wrap up with some actionable steps you can take today. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the toxic leadership trap, or really, the dark side of power. I want to just pause for a second and ask you directly. Have you ever witnessed a really good team absolutely destroyed by a toxic boss and somehow nobody higher up even noticed? Really think about that for a second. The data we're looking at today isn't just a bunch of academic theory. It reflects the lived daily realities of millions of professionals who've just watched team morale quietly evaporate under bad management.
The research points to two really fascinating, though kind of dark, concepts here: hubris syndrome and organizational dehumanization. Basically, when a leader gets blinded by their own power, their empathy literally goes to sleep. They lose all perspective. So instead of seeing their team as human beings, they start objectifying them, basically using people as stepping stones to advance their own personal career goals. They stop listening, their feedback becomes totally selective, and they start operating like they're completely untouchable.
And it's a night and day difference when you compare leadership styles. On one hand, you've got the toxic leader, right? Empathy blind, manipulative, completely self-centered. But on the other hand, you have what researchers call a resonant leader. This is someone who combines high emotional intelligence with crystal clear communication and deep integrity. While the toxic boss relies on dominance and fear, the resonant leader is actively connecting with their team and actually trying to understand the truth from their perspective.
Which brings us to Section 2, the poison of favoritism, and how this toxic behavior bleeds into routine, everyday decisions. What's super interesting about the academic model here is how it pinpoints the exact moment things start to fall apart. It usually happens when standard operating procedures break down. You get a lack of transparency, fuzzy decision-making criteria, and zero accountability for supervisors. When leaders start using their own subjective feelings instead of objective measures to hire or promote people, it just creates the absolute perfect breeding ground for favoritism.
And man, the ripple effect of this is devastating. When human capital decisions are based on gut feelings instead of facts, the consequences are severe. You see a massive drop in performance, morale completely plummets, and motivation gets totally crushed. Because think about it, when your employees see a specific in-group getting favored over everybody else for absolutely no merit-based reason, team productivity is just going to collapse.
All right, part 3, emotional intelligence and integrity. This is basically the compass leaders need to find their way out of those toxic traps.
I absolutely love this analogy. It's inspired by Stephen Covey. He basically says trust is like oil for an organization's engine. Think about that. When a leader operates with high integrity, it breeds trust. And without that essential oil, friction just builds up, and the gears of your team will inevitably grind to a complete halt. Trust is what makes communication smoother and execution infinitely faster. So what does that look like in practice? Well, the research points to level 5 leaders. This is a concept from Jim Collins that perfectly echoes our sources. These leaders have this really unique, powerful mix of traits. They balance intense professional drive with incredibly genuine personal humility. Think of folks like Abraham Lincoln or business giants like Jack Welch. They exhibit unwavering emotional self-control, they keep their own ego in check, and they have this relentless commitment to lifelong learning. It's never about them. It's about the organization succeeding, which creates this amazing positive emotional ripple effect.
Moving into Section 4, the servant leadership model, empowerment over control.
Now, servant leadership, it's not just some abstract feel-good theory. It's a massive fundamental shift in how we work. It's a model where leaders prioritize being a servant first. So instead of that traditional top-down command structure where a boss just demands compliance, you focus entirely on the empowerment, the well-being, and the actual development of your team. You're building a highly inclusive community, not running a dictatorship. Let's break down the specific, everyday habits that separate an okay manager from a truly great, resonant leader. First is listening, and I mean actively listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk. Then there's empathy, really trying to see things from someone else's perspective. Healing, which means deliberately creating a psychologically safe space for your team to recover after setbacks. And finally, stewardship. This is viewing yourself as a caretaker of your people and the broader mission, rather than just an executor of tasks.
And look, if you're sitting there thinking this is all just soft skills fluff, let's look at the actual corporate proof of concept here. Patagonia practically bakes stewardship into every single employee's daily work. Starbucks funds education and mental health resources. Southwest Airlines and Zappos have driven massive financial success simply by fostering a deep culture of belonging. And the Ritz-Carlton, they literally empower their employees with up to a $2,000 allowance per guest per day to solve problems on the spot without ever needing to ask a manager for permission. This model drives unparalleled corporate success.
All right, Section 5, staying objective in decisions.
Great leaders stay utterly objective. A truly emotionally intelligent leader never, ever lets their personal biases dictate who they hire, fire, or promote. Because the minute employee decisions start getting made based on subjective feelings, the leader's personal judgments take over, and boom, we are right back in that trap of toxic favoritism. You have got to rely on objective facts if you want to maintain fairness and trust.
And this means we have to completely rethink how we evaluate our leaders. There was a 2021 Sloan Management Review study that hit the nail on the head. We have to separate results from character. We literally cannot afford to reward toxic behavior just because a manager happens to hit their quarterly financial targets. We need to start assessing leaders on sustainable high performance. We have to value how they achieve their goals just as much as what they achieve.
Bringing it home with Section 6, Actionable Steps for Leaders. This is your blueprint.
Here is your actual implementation roadmap. Step 1, evaluate your current practices right now for any gaps in communication. Step 2, aggressively foster psychological safety, and you do this by modeling fallibility. Admit when you don't have all the answers. Instead of wrapping up a meeting by saying, "Any questions?" try asking, "Hey, what might I be missing here?" It's a tiny language shift, but it builds incredible safety. And step 3, lead by example through tangible action.
Speaking of tangible actions, check out this staggering number, 90%. That is the massive personal salary cut that Dan Price, the CEO of Gravity Payments, took, just so he could fund a $70,000 minimum wage for all of his employees. Now, okay, you might not need to go take a 90% pay cut tomorrow, but it perfectly highlights what it really means to put employee welfare first and lead by extreme example.
So let's do a quick leadership audit right now. I want you to honestly ask yourself about your habits today. Are you using hard data for your decisions, or are you just going with your gut? Are you practicing active listening, like really listening? Have you checked your personal biases at the door? And lastly, do you actually know the real mood of your team right now?
I'm going to leave you with this one lingering, kind of provocative thought. What kind of legacy are you building? Seriously, are you creating a cautionary tale of hubris and toxic leadership? Or are you actively becoming a compass that guides others to greatness? The data shows us exactly what works. The blueprint is literally right here. Now it's completely up to you to implement it. Thank you guys so much for exploring this with me today. Keep learning, keep growing, and definitely keep leading with purpose.